Meta, the owner of Facebook, has been hit with a record-breaking fine by the European Union for violating its data privacy rules. The fine amounts to 1.2 billion euros, or $1.3 billion, and is the largest ever imposed by the EU for data breaches. The reason for the fine is that Meta transferred personal data of Facebook users in the EU to servers in the US, without their consent or adequate protection. This breached a previous court ruling that banned such transfers under the EU's General Data Protection Regulation (GDPR). The GDPR is a law that protects the privacy and rights of EU citizens when their data is processed by companies. It requires companies to obtain clear and informed consent from users before collecting, using, or sharing their data. It also gives users the right to access, correct, delete, or restrict their data. Meta failed to comply with these rules when it moved data of millions of Facebook users across the Atlantic. The EU regulators said this exposed the data to potential surveillance by US authorities and put it at risk of hacking or misuse. Meta has been given 5 months to stop transferring data to the US or face further penalties. Meta said it disagrees with the decision and will appeal it in court. It claims that it has a legal basis for transferring data under a mechanism called Standard Contractual Clauses, SCCs, which are agreements between companies that ensure data protection. However, the EU regulator said that SCCs are not enough to guarantee data protection in this case, and that Meta should have used additional safeguards or suspended the transfers altogether. They also said that Meta did not inform users or regulators about the transfers, and did not conduct proper assessments of the risks involved. This is not the first time that Meta has faced scrutiny over its data practices in Europe. In 2015, an Austrian activist named Max Schrems filed a complaint against Facebook for transferring his data to the US, arguing that it violated his privacy rights. His case led to the invalidation of an agreement called Safe Harbor, which allowed companies to transfer data between the EU and the US. In 2020, Schrems filed another complaint against Facebook, challenging its use of SCCs as a replacement for Safe Harbor. His case led to another ruling by the EU's top court that invalidated another agreement called Privacy Shield, which also allowed data transfers between the EU and the US. The court said that both Safe Harbor and Privacy Shield did not provide adequate protection for EU data in the US, because they did not prevent US authorities from accessing or using the data for national security purposes. The court also said that SCCs can only be used if there are effective safeguards in place to protect EU data in third countries. The latest fine by the EU regulators is based on this ruling, and is seen as a major blow to Meta's business model and reputation. It also sends a strong message to other companies that transfer data across borders, especially to countries with weaker privacy laws than the EU. The fine also reflects the growing tension between the EU and the US over data protection and digital sovereignty. The EU has been pushing for more control over its own data and digital economy, while the US has been resisting any restrictions on its access or use of data for security or commercial reasons. The two sides have been trying to negotiate a new agreement that would allow data transfers between them, but have not reached a deal yet. In the meantime, companies like Meta are caught in a legal limbo, facing uncertainty and potential fines over their data flows. Meta was previously warned by the EU for transferring Facebook users' data to US servers, saying that it was not sufficiently protected from American spy agencies. This warning came after a landmark ruling by the European Court of Justice in 2020, which invalidated a data transfer agreement known as Privacy Shield. The court found that Privacy Shield did not offer adequate safeguards for EU citizens' data against US surveillance laws. Meta, however, continued to transfer EU user data to the US using another legal mechanism called Standard Contractual Clauses. These are agreements between data exporters and importers that are supposed to ensure a high level of data protection. But the Irish Data Protection Commission, which oversees Meta's operations in the EU, found that these clauses were not enough to address the risks posed by U.S. intelligence agencies. The regulator said that Meta infringed the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, which is a set of rules that govern how companies handle personal data in the bloc. As a result, the regulator imposed a record-breaking fine of €1.2 billion, $1.3 billion, on Meta for violating GDPR. This is the highest penalty ever issued under the regulation, surpassing Amazon's €746 million fine, and the regulator also ordered Meta to suspend any future transfers of personal data to the U.S. within 5 months from the decision. Meta said it would appeal both the fine and the order, arguing that they would harm millions of people who use Facebook every day.